It might have just been the end of the January transfer window, but that doesn't stop Arsenal from being linked to some brand new players. Not only that, but there's potential exits to be discussed, and the biggest story of all revolves around a colour that we'd rather not associate with Arsenal, but it might intend to become a new card for referees to use, I'm assuming, completely the wrong way as they do with the other two. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week. You've made it to Friday. And thank goodness it is Friday. Arsenal, of course, not in place until Sunday, where they will take on West Ham at the London Stadium. So we'll have a couple more morning shows before Arsenal play their next game. But there is Premier League action to discuss tomorrow ahead of the weekend. And, of course, there's plenty of still transfer news to discuss as well today. Stories that it just shows you how quickly these things can happen. And also, this is episode number 400 of our news shows. Of course, we've got the transfer show, which we've already done over 400 shows of, but it means that we've definitely done over 800 morning shows. Of course, it's not been a smooth, uninterrupted run. There's been times we've not been able to do them, but to be honest, I assume there's probably, it's probably below 20, the number of days we've probably missed in that 800 plus run. So thank you to everyone that's continued to tune in. I wonder if any of you listening were here for episode 1 of our first ever 8 a.m. edition of the show. Of course, we are looking to try and do 1K every day in terms of likes, and yesterday we did that again. So if you've not already dropped a like on the video, please help us on our way to 1K every day. We're trying to do that as our target to the best of our ability. So it takes you just a second, and it really does help out the channel. So please do indeed drop a like on the video. Right, let's say good morning to those joining us in the chat box. Good morning to Matt G, who, of course, I think I'd be willing to bet maybe has been here since episode 1. Steve Stone 2, Rich Kaiser, Glenn Blackshine, Ismail Z, Wilson, Brad, Amira, Damien, Stevie, Rich Adagoke, Paul. We've got Angela and Morgie and Louis and Martin and Pam, Gunnar, Jake, Barry, Stephen, Rowan, Louis, Angela, Paul, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you. So everybody indeed can tune in and enjoy the TGT family. Do subscribe, as our target this year for 2024 is to try and reach the Emirates Stadium capacity, which I think is just over 60,000. It's not exactly 60,000. Obviously, we say 60,000, but it's not exactly. That is 60,704 is what it is. So that is our target this year. So let's see if we can reach it with your help. Right, let's jump into today's stories, shall we? We start with a big congratulations to Gabriel Magalhaes, who has won the Arsenal Player of the Month award for January. He's had an absolutely fantastic start to 2024 and been a key player in Arsenal's return to the title race. He was big and powerful and, yes, responsible for the own goal and the game against Liverpool, but outside of something which he had absolutely no control over, he was fantastic. He scored the first 2 goals, as we know, against Crystal Palace when Arsenal really desperately needed a victory and to respond against the disappointing start to the year with that FA Cup defeat. But Gabriel deserves this award, deserves this accolade, because he has been utterly and brilliantly fantastic for Arsenal. So without a doubt, Gabriel Magalhaes deservedly winning the January Player of the Month awards. Moving to another Arsenal defender, Jakub Kiwior. Simon Collins of the Evening Standard reporting yesterday that Jakub Kiwior remains linked with a number of Italian sides, including AC Milan. The player was linked, of course, to a move to Serie A in Italy. And, of course, that is where Arsenal signed him from just over a year ago, last year in January. It would make sense for Arsenal maybe to sell the player if they got a profit on his price tag. Otherwise, I don't really see the benefit of letting him go. Of course, if Arsenal can make profit on some of their players that aren't guaranteed starters, that is the way in which Arsenal ultimately need to move in the direction of, improving their selling record and their reputation from a sales perspective. But otherwise, Kiwior's got a lot of talent. He's still got a lot of development still to improve. And I certainly think that he can become a really key part of Mikel Arteta's squad. He's obviously moved to a country where the language has been something of a struggle at the start, but he's certainly acclimatized into life and culture here in England. And I think that he has got a future at Arsenal if indeed we don't receive a bid that isn't significantly higher than the around 20 million that we paid for him just over a year ago. So much more to come from Jakub Kiwior. It doesn't really make sense for Arsenal to sell him unless it's for a serious profit. Now, our headline transfer story of the day comes from John Cross, who reported a number of stories in his article for the Mirror yesterday, including that Arsenal are keen to bring in a winger, and they've been linked with the likes of Pedro Neto, but they also want to bring in a defender and a forward and a midfielder. But the name that was rather new to this discussion, and the suggestions are that Arsenal are scouting Athletic Club's Nico Williams. Nico Williams, a Spanish international and a player that I've talked about on the channel before, a player that I like a lot. He can play on either side of the wide areas and still at the very young age of 21 has got lots of potential. Not only that, but his market value is also very accessible because despite the fact that he signed a brand new contract in December of last year, the release clause of 50 million euros, which is about 43-ish million pounds, has not been changed. So he still has that 50 million euro release clause this season. He's got 5 goals and 10 assists, 15 goal contributions at 21 years of age in 24 appearances for Athletic Club, and of course has been away and has been inducted into the Spanish national side. He's made 11 appearances for Spain's senior team, scoring 2 goals. And he's definitely, he's a starter. He's one of the key starters as one of the youngest stars in La Liga at the moment. I think it would be a really interesting piece of business for Arsenal to complete. And I think that he would represent a really good option to back up Bukayo Saka on the right-hand side. Even though he is right-footed, he's not left-footed, but he's a right-footed player, and he plays more so on the left. I think actually he could be a really good option for the right flank if we ever wanted him to play there. He's been a fantastic option for Athletic Club, and he came through their youth academy, previously being Osasuna as well before that. And he is the brother of Iñaki Williams, of course, as well, the Ghanaian international, who also plays for Athletic Club too. But of course, Pedro Neto is another player that's been linked to Arsenal in those wide areas. For me, if I had the choice between the two, of course, Pedro Neto, I think, would be my choice. There are question marks about Pedro Neto's injury record, which is worth bringing up, and that I think certainly does help to balance the conversation somewhat. However, Nico Williams has also suffered with a number of repetitive muscular problems. He's had hamstring injuries, adductor issues, heel problems. He's had an inner ligament injury, which cost him a game for Athletic Club back. But it's kind of little injury issues that have cost him 1 or 2 games maximum here and there across the course of his very young career so far. So there's injuries related with both players, more seriously certainly with Neto. But I think he'd be a very good option for Arsenal to look to try and sign in the summer if they are moving for a wide player, which I think is a position that they do need to strengthen in. But the headline main footballing story coming out yesterday is this talk of the implementation of blue cards. Now, this story was initially reported, I believe, by the Telegraph, suggested that there are suggestions that IFAB, which is the International Football Association Board, has been looking at trialing what they're describing as sin bins, which will be represented by blue cards. The punishment is said to come into effect if a player was to commit a cynical foul or a show of dissent towards officials. So if you think about that game where Gabriel Martinelli was double booked by Michael Oliver because he committed a cynical foul, I suppose that would be more inclined to receive a blue card now than a red card, in that case for 2 yellows. However, FIFA has since responded to this and has said FIFA wishes to clarify that reports of the so-called blue card at elite levels of football are incorrect and premature. Any such implemented should be limited to testing in a responsible manner at lower levels, a position that FIFA intends to reiterate when this agenda item is discussed at the IFAB AGM on the 1st of March. So it's not necessarily confirmed that these types of trials will be seen at the top level. There has been suggestions and reports that the FA have implemented, or rather have shown their keenness, if you like, to have this system. Now, where I stand on this, I think blue cards in football as a rule could work. And I don't think that there is an argument to suggest that blue cards, if applied correctly, would not be necessarily a terrible thing. I think that there are some red card decisions that are not worthy of a red card in the current state of the rules. And I think there are some decisions and some instances in the sport which require more than a yellow card as well. However, the other side of the coin for me is that blue cards should categorically be absolutely nowhere near this sport because of the incompetence, the inconsistency, and the poor quality of the people that ultimately currently implement and enforce the rules of the game. We can't get the yellow and red card system right at the moment. So how on earth can we expect blue cards and the implementation of further rules and further restrictions and further scrutiny be expected to be delivered in the proper way? We can't expect that because the officiating at the level that we expect it to be, which is at the highest level of this sport, is not good enough. Is not good enough. The consistency has got so poor that we have to have TV channels explaining their rules. We have to have appeal systems that feel like they go through the ringer every single week at this point, at least every single month. Clubs are getting cards and decisions rescinded. Bans are being taken away. Bans are being implemented later. It's just absolutely mind-boggling at this stage to ever consider adding further powers to referees when the powers that be and the powers they currently have are not implemented in the correct way to a consistent and high enough standard that we can actually think about making it even more convoluted and more complicated for these referees to make the decisions. It is such a bad idea to focus on adding further rules rather than more accountability and scrutiny to referees first. I absolutely agree that the abuse that officials receive is well beyond what is acceptable. It's not even well beyond what's acceptable. It's just a bottom line. It's not acceptable. And the referee, I mean, we saw, I think it was a game in the lower leagues of English football where a fan ran onto the field and chased a referee off the pitch. That's the state in which we're getting to. And that's the state in which players, sadly, there's been abuse towards officials from players. There's been abuse towards referees from managers. There's been loads of abuse for years to referees from fans. And I'm on the record and happy to be on the record as saying that this is wrong categorically, that the abuse is wrong, and that we need to do everything we can to try and curb and diminish and dissuade those that would engage in these abusive actions towards officials need to stop, because without referees, where is the sport going to be? We need referees for this sport. We need young referees to come through and want to take up the mantle of this job, which is not easy. It's a really, really difficult job to do. But at the top level, the quality and the consistency and the competency is not good enough at the moment. So for me, all the investment and all the talk and all the suggestions and the research that's going into trying to make the game better by apparently adding a new rule into the midst instead should be channeled specifically into improving the standard of the current state of the officiating of the sport before we get into thinking about adding things. I do think that there is a place for blue cards or orange cards or for something in between the red and the yellow to exist in the sport and to be implemented correctly and efficiently and successfully. I just don't think the sport is anywhere near this stage at the moment. I just don't think it is anywhere near being good enough and officiated well enough to implement another card into the system. So that's where my head's at. As you can tell, I'm quite passionate about this topic because I'm just so sick and tired of the officiating being so poor. But I do think that there is some credit, and I think there is some weight to there being a good argument to implement blue cards into football. But I just don't think that we have got the quality of officiating at the moment to be able to do so at this level. And so I don't think it needs to come anywhere near this sport whatsoever. And that's my rant. That's my monologue about blue cards. And I've kind of got everything I need to get off my chest. Thankfully, though, we can calm ourselves down by bringing you news of a brand new competition courtesy of Football Prizes. It is a fantastic opportunity to win an Ian Wright signed and framed, custom LED framed, I should say, shirts. This is a brand new competition. The link to get involved is in the description. 299 tickets went on sale, and less than 12 hours later, already 72 of those tickets have been sold. I mean, just over 200 of them are left. Get involved. Every time that we promote every time we promote these competitions, the tickets get quickly snapped up. So I can't guarantee there's any but left tomorrow. I'd expect there probably will be, but you never know. So don't risk it. Link in the description. There's not only that, but there's some instant win prizes involved in this one as well. Just by entering this competition, you give yourself a chance of winning a Martin Odegaard signed shirt and a Freddie Ljungberg signed shirt, as well as plenty of other football prizes. Site credit to get involved in future competitions. You can buy more than one ticket to these. You don't have to just buy one. You know, it's not like a raffle where you get one ticket and it's done. You get loads of chances. So get involved. Link down in the description. UK only, as always. And best of luck to everybody that gets involved in the competition. Right, let's move to part 2 and your questions, shall we? All right, after this. Okay, there we go. Lovely stuff. We move swiftly into the second part of today's show to tackle your questions, to tackle your thoughts and your theories. I'm probably going to get a lot of questions about the yellow, blue, red card systems. So get involved with those. Anything on the transfer topics we discuss, anything else that you'd like an answer to, if I'm able to give it, I will certainly try to. We'll get some of your reaction, I guess, to the some of this blue card stuff. Chris says, was there any official outcome about the Turkish owner who attacked the referee? I don't know, actually. That's a really good question. That was on the 12th of December. It was Halil Umut Meler has left Turkish football in a full-blown crisis, was the headline on the first line of the BBC report. Let's see if there's any other news. All reports are from a month ago at the moment, so it doesn't look like there will be anything. The last word on this that I can really see is a month ago report from Sky saying the Turkish referee Halil Umut Meler says he will not forgive MKE Ankaragucu president Faruk Koçer, who punched him to the ground. So that's the last report that I've seen. Let's see if there's anything else in the last week on this. 22 hours ago, Bleacher Report. Turkish club, this is according to Bleacher Report, so I'm reading off their website. It says Turkish club Ankaragucu president Faruk Koçer was arrested Tuesday after punching referee Halil Umut Meler in the face after his team's match against Rizespor on Monday, according to TMZ Sports. Per Reuters, ESPN, after the final whistle was blown and a 1-1 draw following Rizespor's equaliser, Koçer was seen punching Meler in the face. So there is a report from less than 24 hours ago on TMZ, which, you know, I don't know how reliable this is. But there's suggestions and reports going out that he's apparently been arrested. So take that. I guess I don't know why they would make it up. It's a pretty damning thing if indeed it is made up. But yeah, there is a report less than a day ago saying that he's been arrested. So I guess there has been some fallout from that. So there you go. Thank you for asking that question, because I actually was curious as to what was going to go on. TJ asks, very simple question, Tom. Why would it be blue and not orange, which is in between yellow and red? It's a great question, to be honest. My only answer for that is that you can clearly define the difference between a blue card and the red and the yellows. Is there any suggestion that the orange may be too close to red or too close to yellow that maybe you wouldn't be able to differentiate? I don't know. Is there a color blindness thing related to it? I don't know. I'm being serious. I don't know. Maybe there's a reason as to why they have to have the differentiation of the clear color difference in those cards. But yeah, it's blue's quite like you think about the color of red to yellow, that spectrum, red, orange, yellow. It's meant to be quite a warning level of, like, you think about warning signs, they always come in red, yellow. Whereas blue, especially when I think about blue in like driving senses here in the UK, at least, blues are usually kind of like instructions, like one-way systems and things like that. So yeah, it's interesting. Interesting. Let's go to Roy says, Tom, could you imagine how players would not be in the sin bin if Mike Dean was still refereeing? Oh, and they're still anti-Tainer as well. So we'll see that outcome after all, says Roy. I actually saw Mike Dean the other day. He was in the Arsenal press lounge, of course, with it being the the Arsenal-Liverpool game being broadcast on Sky. You've got the referees like Mike Dean, who does the Sky referee punditry. And it's so like surreal at times just seeing him in that environment. There's been so much criticism of Mike Dean and his refereeing and some of his words after refereeing as well. And it's just, just like walking by, having his pre-match meal. It's bizarre. It's still bizarre to me. Benji says, who do you think is the first player and manager to get a blue card? I don't know. It's a good question about the managers, by the way. I don't know if the blue cards are also for managers. I really don't know. I don't know if if they are for managers at all. So I can't say that. I can't say that we know if managers will also face blue cards or if it's just for players. I think that the first player to get one will be an Arsenal player. Obviously, it's just the way forward. And then the picture of the blue card being used will always be with an Arsenal player, as we see it with yellows and red cards. I remember there was a story recently about discipline in the Premier League, and they used a picture of one of the Arsenal players being given a yellow card. Arsenal have received the least number of yellow cards this season compared to any other team. They have 38. Manchester City have 39. The rest of the clubs have even more. And yet they still use Arsenal and the pictures of Arsenal relating to yellow cards whenever there's a story in general about officiating. It's always a picture of an Arsenal player getting a yellow, even though we're one of the more disciplined teams in the league. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's because there is such a reputation around Arsenal. It's such kind of a feel around Arsenal that you put a picture up with Arsenal getting booked, even in a story that's not related specifically to Arsenal, it's going to get you those clicks. It's going to get you that attention. So yeah, Arsenal are often used as kind of a engagement tactic always. Burris says, as I understand it, the blue card is not in between the yellow and red cards. It's identical to a yellow card, except that for that is only given for unsportsmanlike behaviour. I suppose so. It is said that a blue and a yellow equals a red, a blue and a blue equals a red, and so, or a blue and a yellow then in that order equals a red as well. So it's basically another form of the yellow card, but it's with a harsher punishment of a 10-minute sin bin that is given for specific unsportsmanlike or kind of dissent type behaviours, show professional fouls. And by the way, I think 10 minutes is an incredible long time for a professional foul, but maybe that is worth it. Also, what I don't like about it is that it's adding more subjective view to the game. So like what counts as dissent? Saying F off to a referee? Yeah, without a doubt. Throwing your arm up in the air in frustration. Is that enough to count as a 10-minute sin bin? I don't think so. But you know, when you see players go like that, where they like throw their arm around after a decision's made, I don't think that's the right way forward. I've realised I've not plugged in my... No. Don't die on me, laptop, please. That's the missus plugging in her... The missus plugs in an electric toothbrush and then takes out my charger. Thankfully, I caught it just before we died. Oh, and by the way, apologies that there was like 10 minutes of like just a black screen at the end of yesterday's show. I clicked end broadcast and it just said, this error, we can't end the broadcast. And I was like, okay, great. I'm just going to have a black screen for 10 minutes. Thankfully, if you were listening on audio platforms, you didn't get any of that because I edited it out. But I couldn't edit that much out onto the end of the YouTube one. So sorry that that's there at the end of yesterday's show. It was very frustrating. I was just sitting there like, the show's not going to finish. It's just going to go on forever. I'm going to have to do like a live radio show all day. That's the only way it's going to work. But thankfully, eventually it did end automatically. Olu says, hey, Tom, my realistic summer transfers is Williams and Zubimendi for £100 million. Tony for 50 million. I thought you said realistic, Olu. Diamande for 45. Unsure on Osimhen and Neto injury records at the moment. Yeah, 50 million for Tony, I don't think is realistic, sadly. Olu, neither would he be my pick of strikers. It's not good enough for me. Process says, Tom, do you see yourself hosting a live show outside of the UK in the future? Well, I've done some appearances on Sirius XFM, who are obviously a North American-based radio station. Radio is something I love. I love listening to radio. I listen to radio every single day. I love the idea of phone-in shows as well, as why I've done them. And sorry there wasn't a phone-in show yesterday. I had an incredible headache yesterday evening, so I just couldn't. And then I had an earache as well, which if you've ever suffered from them, they're horrible. I get them really bad because I wear earphones and earbuds all the time. So sadly, I get them quite a lot. But yeah, it's something that I definitely would love to do. I love writing, of course, but kind of speaking and talking is my main. So yeah, definitely that's something that maybe in the future will be a possibility. Black Magic, which by the way, if you don't know, is a fantastic song by Graphics, drum and bass plug there, which if you've played Forza Horizon, you'll know the song on the hospital radio station. But Black Magic says, do you agree that if introduced, blue cards should only be used before issuing a yellow card and not subsequently to a yellow card? No, not really. I mean, I mean, interestingly, if you're going to give a blue card after a yellow card, that's going to get you sent off anyway. So you could argue that it's going to be a yellow card and a yellow card anyway. But a dissent or professional fouls when you're already on a yellow are going to get you a second yellow anyway. So I guess it's just up to discrepancy. It doesn't really matter what colour the card is. You're going to get sent off anyway, I guess, aren't you? Billy says, Havertz will be the first one to get a blue card for a cynical foul. I think the blue card is silly, but we'll get used to it just like the spray and the VAR. By the way, any word on Lokonga's future? Nothing yet, Billy. The club, haven't made a decision on him. He's doing really, really well at Luton, and Luton are really keen on keeping him. I know Rob Edwards is a really big fan of Lokonga, so there's certainly scope for him to maybe have a future. I did tweet a couple of weeks ago saying I don't think his story at Arsenal is done, and I stand by that for now. I guess we will wait and see. Reggie says, Tom, the problem is that PGMOL haven't defined fouls and such precisely enough to allow for those nuances between decisions. You're absolutely right. Calvin says, hi, Tom, I agree with the sin bins. However, just use yellow card offences to send players to the sin bin. No need to complicate things with an extra card. I guess that referees could also say it's a yellow card and then a signal to point towards a sin bin. That could be something that works, I guess. Paul says Tony isn't worth more than 50 million. Anything above that, and he should not be considered, especially at his age. I do tend to agree. If you can get him for 50 million or less, then there's more. I'm more amicable towards that deal, but anywhere near more than that. JKO says, Tom, don't control our emotions has been used in terms of celebrations that people deem too much. Can it be used as an argument for people that get so angry that they wrongly abuse referees? No, they can't. Because celebrations and positive emotion not being able to be controlled is different. There are lines that you don't cross. There are lines that, if are crossed, should face punishment. At no point do we go, I got too emotional, so I committed a crime. No, it's just not. And abuse, by the way, is. Racial abuse is a crime. Homophobic abuse is a crime. And we can't use excuses of getting too emotional or too passionate as any kind of defense. So no, JKO, you cannot use that as a defense to say that we wrongly abuse referees, but it's because we were too passionate or too emotional or too angry. Because then where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line? And eventually, if you open the doors for this, if you widen the scope for what's allowed to be directed towards referees, then people start taking liberties. And no, it's not right. Let's go to Fraction of Offside Podcast says, what happens if a keeper receives a blue card? Maybe a Ramsdale minute. Maybe there would be temporary substitutions, or maybe you'd have to put one of the outfield players in goal for 10 minutes. I mean, that would be quite crazy, wouldn't it? That would be absolutely mad. Geary 1999 says, yes, Tom, what a win against Liverpool. Arteta is the man. Love the content as always. Best Arsenal content creator. Thanks, mate. That's very kind of you indeed. Fuad says, we need to see you do some co-commentary with Harry on TalkSport. Let's get it done. Oh, I'll tell you what, me and Harry doing some co-coms together. That would be interesting. Obviously, he does BBC Radio London commentary rather than TalkSport. I know he does the TalkSport punditry and stuff, but yes, and he's got one of his own shows, I think, now on TalkSport. What a journey that boy has had. Fantastic work. Love Harry. Fantastic guy, and deserves everything that he gets. James says, only toddlers have the excuse of not being able to control their emotions. Absolutely. When you're an adult, you're an adult. You're responsible for your actions. It's as simple as that. And JKO says, I don't agree with the abuse, by the way. I just thought about it for an extended period of time about how some people end up doing something so absurd like running onto the pitch. And then they should face the consequences for those actions. Simple as that. As pointed out in the previous comment. if you're a child, if you're a toddler, if your brain is not fully formed, I can have some level of sympathy to a degree, not always. Sadly, it goes even so far in those young age brackets sometimes. But when you're an adult, there's no excuse at all. No excuse for abuse whatsoever. So there you go. Tizer says, surely before you introduce new cards and rules, you should make sure that the current standard is at its highest and the current rules are being implemented correctly. They can't even define the handball correctly yet. You're absolutely right, which is what obviously I was talking about in part one. If you haven't, by the way, already, I'm going to carry on for a little bit longer. I didn't plug it at the start of part two. So if you haven't already dropped a like on the video, please make sure you do. We are doing our 1K every day. Let's get that hashtag into the chat box, please. 1K every day is, of course, what we're trying to achieve on our videos. So please do hashtag 1K every day into the chat and make sure you drop a like on the video before you go anywhere. Philip says, Tom, future challenge of making an all-time starting 11 using 11 different nations. Do they have to be Arsenal players? I suppose if it's just Arsenal, it's easier. If you do all players, it becomes much harder to do. Maybe, Philip, that's something that we'll tackle in the future. Raybeam says, Tom, I'm the father of 2 toddlers. Seriously, you have no control. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why they got the excuse. That they haven't learned, and some adults sadly still act like toddlers, especially on YouTube. But when it comes down to the actions of those when you're an adult, you have to face the consequences. Chris says the blue cards are another diversion away from the standard of refereeing. Darren says, I can see the referees just waiting to ping Arteta with a blue card. Absolutely. So there you go. James says, are the constant additions to the laws of our game to improve the rules to trying to fix the inability to implement them properly? We didn't need the foam when the referees was punishing Wolves and they moved. I think the foam was actually quite effective, to be honest. I think that's been a really good implementation. I think there are good implementations that don't require necessarily the standard of refereeing to be ridiculous. A free kick happens, you put the foam around the ball, you count 10 yards, and you put the foam for a free kick wall. It's not exactly like it needs ridiculously high levels of refereeing to get that correct. You need to be able to walk 10 paces, which to be honest, a referee should have as a minimum requirement to be able to walk and judge what 10 paces is. So, yeah, I don't think it's the same, James, at all. Steve says, did you see RVP's comments that Arsenal didn't offer him a new contract to stay? I have. The suggestions he said, if anyone can give him the evidence that Arsenal did offer him a new contract, he'd give them £1 million. You know, I don't know what. He has no reason to lie about it. But it's odd, isn't it? We're way past that now. It's not something I really want to get too deep about, but it's way past that at the moment. So we don't really know. We'll never know, I guess, what the real truth is because we weren't there. But it's not something that Arsene Wenger's ever discussed at all. So, and Man United offered 24 million quid and they let it go. I think obviously there was conversation that went on, like Van Persie wanted assurances about the signings that Arsenal would make and the money that they would make and that they would spend, and he didn't get that. Clearly, I think he's made that pretty clear. And I guess that's why they decided not to offer a contract. And when the offer came in, they accepted it. So, yeah, it's he moved to Manchester United. He chose to do that. You know, if he wanted to leave without that that label of being a snake, if you like, then stay for your full season and then join Manchester United when your contract finishes. You could have done that, but you didn't. You left for Man United. That's why he and Alexis Sanchez will never be considered Arsenal legends for their contributions to the club. Same as Cesc Fabregas. You know, I like Cesc Fabregas. I don't begrudge him of that move to Chelsea at all, but it's difficult to go down as a Chelsea legend. Sorry, as an Arsenal legend, having played for and won a league with Chelsea. It's hard to do that. Alvamod says, what difference does it make if there was no offer to Van Persie? If it was clear about his intentions, then why bother? It means nothing. Absolutely, I agree. Ross says, Tony's entering the last year of his contract. His value will begin to fall. Sure, but I mean, there's going to be lots of interest and Brentford are going to try and demand the absolute maximum amount of money for him. So doesn't mean that he's still going to be going below 50 million quid to try and sign him. And neither would I still think he's good enough to be bought by. I don't think he is good enough. And I think his age profile is the wrong profile for Arsenal. I think we can get and do better in the market than Ivan Toney. I wasn't impressed with him against Manchester City, and I haven't really been impressed with him necessarily enough since he's returned to action from his ban. I know it's going to take a little bit of time for him to get up to speed, but as someone that's a self-proclaimed fittest footballer in the Premier League, supposedly, for the training regime that he was on, I've not yet seen enough to suggest that he is going to be coming back and changing things. If it does, I hold my hands up, without a doubt. We always react to the evidence, but so far, not enough to convince me. Carl says, Tom, any news why Carl Hein isn't in the Champions League squad? Isn't he in the B squad, Carl? I think he's in the B squad, so he doesn't need to be in the A squad because of his age. Chris says, hi, Tom. Do you know what kind of profile of winger Nico Williams is? Is he pacey or more technical? He's got both, Chris. He's a good dribbler. He's fast. He's a right-footer that plays more on the left, but of course can play on the right. Can take players on, can score goals. He's creative as well. But he's still young. He's still got raw edges, so there's still plenty more to come from Nico Williams at Arsenal. Ajmal says, what's your preferred back four in the Champions League when everyone's fit? Depends on the opponent. If it's the Champions League final, I think I'd be minded to play White, Saliba, Gabriel, Tomiyasu, to be honest. But Zinchenko's definitely got a place. But if Timber's obviously fit, there is an argument that Timber comes into that left back role as well. I see Mike's in the chat. You know what Mike loves to do? Mike loves to throw questions in chat boxes that he can just text me. Like he has my number and he's sitting there going, are you going to be crashing at mine after the game on Sunday night? Mike's actually traveling over again. He's in the, lock up your wives. Mike's over on Sunday. So, yeah, but I'm not even going to reply, now. You could just text me, Mike, but instead you're trying to hijack my chat box. So instead I'm just gonna ignore you. Might just go home now after the West Ham game. I'm not sure I need to do anything after the West Ham game. I'm working, mate. I'm working, so I'm going to be working till about 6 anyway. 6, yeah, it's about 6 o'clock. Temi says, "Who is Arteta's worst signing in your opinion?" Nuno Tavares. I think maybe Nuno Tavares. TJR says block him. Willian, he was free. I know he cost a lot of money in wages. And he did obviously contribute in some games. Obviously, that first game of the season against Fulham, he scored a pretty decent game. Willian's up there. I think it's got to be between Willian and Tavares. Runarsson, not really, because Runarsson's never really played. Like Tavares and Willian actually played a fair number of games. So yeah, Marie again. I don't think Marie goes down as one of the worst signings either, because he cost like £5 million. And actually, he did have some good performances, and then we sold him for a profit. So, I mean, it was a profit in terms of the money we paid for him, not probably the overall investment. It's between Willian and Tavares. It's not Cedric either. Cedric was free. Tavares cost us money. Willian cost a lot of money in wages. It's between those two, Tavares and Willian. If Willian makes a profit, then it's Willian. If Tavares makes a loss, I think it's probably Tavares. But it's between those two. I think it's pretty easy. I saw, I think it was Alex from The Different Knock did a tier list of Arteta's signings. Some of them were quite harsh, I thought, actually. Saying Ramsdale needs time. I don't think I think Ramsdale was a decent signing at minimum, and he's probably going to make us a profit. Raya is certainly still, I think that's fair, needs time, that's fine. But Ramsdale, I think, was a decent signing, had 2 good seasons for Arsenal, and now will probably make us a profit. So I don't think we can say Ramsdale is anything other than a decent signing. Overall, I think he got most of them spot on. Bakary Lasagna says, in your opinion, who was the worst player to wear an Arsenal shirt, and why is it Andre Santos? Whoa! Andre Santos scored a huge goal for Arsenal at Stamford Bridge in a massive, massive win. My first visit to the Emirates Stadium was that day. I had a stadium tour with my dad and then went to watch the Chelsea-Arsenal game in a pub in the... what's it called? It's the one opposite the 12 Pins. Michael give me the answer. The pub opposite the 12 Pins, its name has now just completely escaped me, because I don't think I've been in there since that day, actually. But Andre Santos scoring at Chelsea. So sorry, it can't be. It can't be that. The worst player to ever wear an Arsenal shirt it's William Gallas is probably up there. Yeah, you're right, TJ. William Gallas is definitely up there. 100%. It's got Blackstock. Thank you, Morgie. There we go. It's got to be William Gallas. Without a doubt, it's got to be William Gallas. Mustafi, it can't be Mustafi. Mustafi scored in a North London derby, is he not? I'm sure Mustafi scored against Spurs. Goal versus Spurs. Yeah, he headed in a free kick past Spurs keeper Hugo Lloris in 2017. So it can't be Mustafi. It's got to be William Gallas. Has to be William Gallas. I don't think there can be an argument for anybody else, to be honest. So, yeah, 100% William Gallas. Right, we'll end the show there. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Please make sure you drop a like on the video before you go anywhere. It is very much appreciated. And apologies for the slight, I can see there might be a few fuzzy internet connections towards the end of today's show. Apologies for that. But yes, please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Have a fantastic Friday. I will see you probably tomorrow morning. I don't know if we're going to be able to squeeze in a preview show today or it might be tomorrow. But I will endeavour to try and bring you that before the West Ham game. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, stay well, stay respectful and happy. And as always, up the Arsenal. And thank you for helping us reach 400 Arsenal News episodes. You are all very much appreciated. Up the Arsenal, guys.